All right, guys, let's get back. I'm sitting outside tonight, a little humid, but designed our pergola out here so that I could work outside by the fireplace. And whoop, that was a Guinness. And my noble corgi, good girl, is standing watch over us. Mm. Now, we covered a few things in class today that I want to go over again. One of them is sort of rendering depth of field. So to do that, and this might be helpful, I'm sorry about a little bit of outside noise. We got some traffic going uh, past our outdoor garden here, but this is where I want to work tonight, so we'll all just have to deal with it. Let's create a new graph in our Bifrost graph editor because this is someplace you guys will be working for your project. And we're going to do both strands, all right? And after we do strands, I'll do a separate tutorial, short, but on points. So the first thing we want to create here, we'll hit tab. Let's create a torus primitive. And like I said, generally torus or sphere work the best for this sort of work. I'm going to create a vector field scope. Not you, bloody hell. It's a little harder working outside than I thought. I thought it would be like really nice because I've got a nice CAO 770 flathead cigar. I thought I'd just kind of sit out here and enjoy myself. Let's do a curl field, curl noise field. Let's do a scale field. Um, not quite as relaxing as I thought. One, my Wi-Fi does not reach out as far as I thought it would. Who knew? Shit happens. All right, next we hit tab. We're going to set our strand profile size. And so let's do our set strand size profile and then do our set Arnold. All right, so we're basically set up to do what we need to do. Again, sorry about the noise. I don't understand this whole trend with people with super freaking loud cars or trucks. I mean, I have a motorcycle and it's loud, but it's loud just because it's a bloody motorcycle. And it's even not that loud. All right, so sorry. Wah, first world problem. So here's our mesh torus. Let's increase our size to about 40. And let's increase our major segments to, well, you know what? Let's do our major segments after we've sort of mucked about with everything else. Because really, this tutorial is a bit about shading and camera. Now, for those of you who have not been watching, no, I can't do it that way because you wouldn't know. For those of you who have been looking through the whole tutorial, you'll be very successful on this assignment. For those of you who are skipping around or watching a little bit here and there, uh, you're going to biff it. You're going to biff it hard. I just need you to know. I'm pretty much making these expecting everyone will watch every minute of it because I'm actually mentioning things throughout the tutorials that will be mandatory throughout the assignment. And I decided that's a fair way to do it. Why? Because I can. All right. So vector field scope, first thing we're going to do is display flow lines. And then let's increase our flow line display. Now I'm going to like 181 here. That might be a little hefty. Let's actually dial it back to like 36 because once we increase this mesh torus resolution, these are going to pop up a lot more. And again, this one's not so much about creating the structure as it is about setting our camera and doing all that stuff we need to do there. All right. So let's go to scale field and we're going to scale this field. Let's do 10 tab 10 tab 10. Yummy. All right. Set strand size, I tend to go with 0.18 or zero point 0.2. I like them to be a little fine. And under Arnold, we'll set our strand size. From our mode override, we'll set default to thick. And that just has to do with the way it render in the Arnold render engine. All right, so like I said, we're doing strands right now. We'll set some points later. Now, a little trick I showed you guys today, I'll widescreen that out, is if you were to grab all of these like so and hit L on your keyboard, it automatically organizes everything for you. That's actually a nice little trick I learned the other day, so I'm kind of passing it on to you. Sorry about that. I wish everyone in my neighborhood drove a Tesla. It'd be nice and quiet. So, here we are. All right, got our strands. Now, not a hugely impressive array. If we go to our Create Mesh Torus and we change our major segments to something like 1500, you'll see. And here's the thing. I'm out here. I'm not working in my studio on the Dreadnought, which is that massive, one of my massive studio computer systems. I'm working out here on a laptop that's pretty much akin to what you guys are working with yourselves. So I think this is all fair game. If I can do it out here, you can certainly do it on your systems. Pardon me, on your systems themselves. All right, so I'm going to right click, add a favorite material, AI standard surface material. Now, we'll keep it pretty basic for now, and then we'll look at shading it with a ramp, and just so that you guys can get kind of a refresher on that, right? So let's go up here to our render settings. Let's make sure we're in at least 1920 by 1080. And so let's do full HD 1080. And then under our viewport here, minimize that just to make it a little easier. In our viewport camera settings, we are going to turn on our resolution gate. Now, this is important. It really does allow me to see like, hey, here's what you're seeing. I kind of like this right about here. I dig that. And so that'll be where I'm going to render. Now, if I were just to set in right now an Arnold mesh light, and sorry, Skydome light, and then turn visibility to camera down to 0, and we were to give this a render, boom, let's give that a minute. And we're getting about to what we've got. We're going to let it render a little longer. So, sorry, I'm blowing a mosquito off here. Happy days. Now, one thing I like to do is I like to taper the ends of my strands. Talked about that a lot. And to do that, we're simply going to pull off the profile for our set strand profile size here. And under profile, we're going to taper that down. I'm going to pull that point down to here. And as you can see, it tapers all of our strands to a point when we get right here. So let's render that again and just take a look at what we've got. Oh, that's lovely. All right. Again, happy days. Now, let's make this shader a bit more complex. Again, part of the tutorial. Let's just graph that out. That looks pretty nice there. Let's move this over. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an AI utility shader. Move that out. And then I can just move that shader group down. Keep that right there. We'll hit tab again and we'll do an AI ramp, and we're going to always do a ramp RGB. Well, I can't say always, I'll say most of the time. So here's our basic setup. Now we're going to change our AI utility from out color, and we're going to pull in the R value to input, and then the full out color to our base color. And now let's go change a few things in here so that it'll work the way we want it to. Under AI utility, I'm going to change the shade mode from uh, N.I to flat. And then color mode, we're going to change for strands. We will use a uniform ID. For points, we would use a primitive ID. Again, for strands, we use a uniform ID. For points, we use a primitive ID. So I'm going to switch to a uniform ID here. Then under our ramp here, we can either create our own ramp, and remember I set the interpolation to none so that we get these nice bifurcated values, but I am just going to go and choose, let's do a brown, blue, and orange ramp here. Um, I guess it's lovely. I don't know. That's not quite my thing, but we'll dig on it as it is. The other thing we're going to do is here with our ramp, we have to set the type to custom. Once we've done all of these things, this ramp should render up. As you can see, boom, there we go. We've got all of our nice little colors mapped out to each separate strand. Quite lovely. I mean, yeah, looks like a screensaver right now. We're going to tweak this a little bit. Let's stop that. Next thing I'm going to do is I want to create some depth of field with the camera. So I would really like to have the camera focus on this area right here, and then have a shallower depth of field kind of commit itself out. So how do we do that? Well, like I showed you before, we're going to create a locator, and then we're going to move that locator. We might have to kind of like tweak our visuals here, but we're going to move that locator so that it's kind of intersecting. Let's scale that up. So it's intersecting with this area right here. That's pretty good already, actually. Sometimes I'll have to go into my Sorry. Sometimes I'll have to go into my orthographic views to make sure that we're getting it right on point. But notice I'm just kind of moving it a little bit here, and I think about right there should be good. Now, I need to figure out how far my locator is from my virtual camera lens here. And to do so, I'll come up to Display, Heads Up Display, and we'll turn on Object Details. Now, with our locator chosen, we'll see that our distance from camera is 85.343. I'll select my camera, View, Select Camera, and then I'll scroll down to the Arnold section. I'll turn on Enable Depth of Field, and then I will just take that value right here, 85343, and punch it in right here, 85.343. And then when I change my aperture size after enabling depth of field, tick that button right here. We're going to start to get a nice shallow depth of field, which will create a bit more visual presence for our object. Now, the higher I change this aperture size, the shallower that depth of field gets, meaning the tighter that focus will get to that one area, and the more out of focus these other areas will get. So let's let that run for a second. All right. It's all right. I think we need to move our point of focus forward. And again, I could just kind of experiment with this and start moving numbers. I will tell you though, from personal experience, it is much, much easier to just get this number right here, 60.879, 60.879. I want to create a nice bit of depth of field without too much forward visual resistance. There we go. This area is pretty sharp and it starts to fall off as we get back from the camera. Now, That is a simple and quick tutorial on setting depth of field, utilizing, well, anything. We can do this with any sort of scene we do, but this is the one we're doing with the Bifrost Graph Editor. While we're here, let's do one more tweak. I'm going to give our graph editor a little bit of a tweak to bring up a slight bit more detail here. Let's open that back up. And it's right here. Create mesh torus. Let's make our segments about 4,000. Really kind of build this up in here. Give it a second to calculate. This little Alienware laptop, though, has proven itself to be fairly capable, if not terribly stable. And so I'll do a snapshot so we can see it before and after. So before was 1,500 segments on our torus. This will be a render with 4,000 segments on our torus. There we go. You can see the geometry is a lot denser. Yeah, not too shabby. Now, I haven't tweaked our lighting. We're just dealing with right now um, just one sort of sky dome light. If I did want to change that light a bit and put in HDRI, I could do so. Again, we'll go to our file here, browse, and in my downloads, I've got some HDRI lights somewhere. Canary Wharf. Let's do, there we go. And under color balance, I'll always make certain to turn on alpha is luminance. Otherwise, our HDRI will not work the way we want it to. And let's do a snapshot, just a before and after. So we'll compare just the sky dome light with the HDRI light. The HDRI light gives us a much more interesting, as you can see, sort of shadow balance here. And I'll even grab that HDRI in the background here. And I will, without hesitation and without mercy, rotate that to get my key light in a more interesting place and to get my shadow balance in a more interesting place. So there you have it. We're about done with our render. We've created another strand node graph with a different shader applied to it this time. We have also created a nice depth of field render. Depth of field is something, whether you give it a little bit or a lot, it's something that really adds a bit of je ne sais quoi, a little bit of riz, whatever you want to call it, to your render. It gives it more depth, more reality. It feels more physical when you do it this way. So give it a try. Hopefully that'll work for you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. And remember, hey man, you need to kick that like button.